Betrayal and cover-up. Many of you probably feared and expected that this would be a boring trial. I think you will find that that will not be the case. This is a story of a young man, Robert Ramirez, a native son of Chicago. Robert has spent his whole life here in the Chicago area. Robert, like many young teenage boys here, had a few scrapes with authority, petty vandalism, a fight that resulted in breaking of bones both of Robert and the other kid. But a truly wonderful thing happened to Robert during his sophomore year of high school. He met Maria. Maria turned out to be the love of his life. He began to settle down. He took a good, long, hard look at where his talents really lie, where his interests were. And having done a good amount of part-time work in the construction industry, he decided to go into construction full-time. And so in his junior year of high school, he pulled out of high school and went to work in construction. And there he found great satisfaction that academics had not given to him in the years prior. He was able to provide for himself, to earn a good living, to have the recognition of others for a job well done. And his boss was impressed. And so as the first year of his full-time work was coming to a close that following spring, he and Maria got married. And about a year after that, he and Maria had little Robert Jr., truly the pride of both their lives, just a beautiful little boy. And so even though the fame and fortune that so many people would hope to find Robert did not show, I think it is very important to recognize this work ethic, this character that he had demonstrated, not being in trouble anymore, being able to fully support his family. These are significant factors to consider when evaluating this individual. It is truly the important things of what it is to be part of society. Not making a big splash, but to contribute. And Robert did contribute. And so the evening for which you will hear much of during this trial, the evening of December 6th, started out with Robert looking for good times with some very good friends that he had known since childhood. He left with a six-pack in tow to be able to take in a NBA game, basketball game on TV. And after he and his two buddies watched the game, they pulled out a deck of cards and played rummy for an hour or so. Following that, they went out and hit a couple bars. The evening ended up with a very exhilarating foot race at Wicker Park shortly before 4 in the morning. Wicker Park is a place where these three guys had often played in the softball league together, a league that they were still very, very much engaged in during the summer season. That 2-mile trip home, Robert drove himself, which may not have been the best choice to have done. So we need to keep in mind that he did have 2 beers. He also had 4 to 5 scotch and waters that evening. I'd much rather tell you that he was returning from choir practice instead of the tragedy that was about to occur, but that simply would not be the case. Facts matter. Even when I first heard the story of Robert's activities that evening, looking at the NBA game, which he thought was between the Chicago and Cleveland, I did my due diligence and found that Chicago wasn't playing that evening. It was actually Cleveland and Detroit that was the game. So I think we can safely assume that Robert was far more engaged with the time spent with his friends than just watching TV. But you will be looking at Robert very, very closely, as I hope the other parties of this lawsuit. But I know as well that you will be putting me under the microscope too. And I want to promise you that any facts I present, any testimony I offer, will be facts and testimony that I personally believe to be true, nothing less. The facts and testimony that I bring to you in this case revolve two detectives for the city of Chicago, Officer Levy and Officer Waldman. These two detectives, in the early morning of December 7th, did antagonize, if not bait, Robert Ramirez, resulting in Detective Waldman shooting Robert in the back. Grievous injury bringing him near death. Detectives are those who we owe so much in our society, who we esteem. Individuals that we expect a degree of experience, a skill set, skills involving recollection of details, coolness and pressure, being able to deal with difficult situations, all at the same time maximizing the safety for us all. What's interesting in this case is the lack of recall that Officers Levy and Waldman have. That the conduct, the procedure that they followed this evening leaves me puzzled. Conduct procedures that I would not be expecting a rookie cop to have done. But yet, all of this is their sworn testimony. This is a difficult thing for us in society because we put so much value and respect to our law officers. We give them power. We give them authority over us. This is not something that we take lightly. And it is so hard to accept when a very few of these betray that trust that we have given to them. But it is a fact of life today that there are those in our society whom we've given this trust that have betrayed us. Pastors, priests, coaches, teachers, doctors, the list goes on. And when we discover that this betrayal has occurred, we do have to deal with it. It's not something that we can ignore. The situation here is not a welcome one. I think it is more akin to a parent learning that their child has seriously hurt someone else. This is not something that the parents can ignore. The child does need to face the music. And the parents will have to deal with the ethical, the moral, and certainly the legal issues that will come of this in coming about with a remedy that will best fit the situation. The activities of the early morning of December 7th, with the bullying that Officers Waldman and Levy had done, it did get out of hand. And when it got out of hand, shooting without cause Robert Ramirez, they needed a story, and they fabricated one. And the story they fabricated was one that they felt they could put in details they could assume would be correct, reasonable for a young Latino trouble-seeking male. Yet, when Robert came to from his coma over 2 weeks later, after losing 50 pounds, over a quarter of his body weight, after a bullet had been removed from his heart, when Robert recovered, the story told was now much different from that which Officers Levy and Waldman had said under oath. The story really shows itself to be Swiss cheese. And officers Levy and Waldman now have the dilemma of how to put the toothpaste back into the tube. This is not a welcome task for society to do. It is a difficult one. But it does need to be addressed. What happened to Robert that evening was grievous physical pain and near death. What he has been able to do after being released from the hospital, though he was hired back due to his employer's recognition of the great value that Robert had in his construction duties, in his abilities, it isn't a lesser task. He is not able to do that which he was able to do before. He still experiences great pain. There is not assurance that he will be able to make a full recovery. And even though the amount that we have come to this court for redress, remedies, financial, well into the six figures, are large numbers, no reasonable person would change places with Robert to go through what he had to go through in order to get what we ask of this court for the justice, the injustice shown to Robert by officers Levy and Waldman that evening. I ask that you listen to the facts, the testimony that we have. I will do my very best to make it clear. And I thank you greatly for the earnest attention that you have given me here. Thank you.